Hi everyone, my name is Harazim. I am 17 years old, and this is my journey as a rare disease patient. But first, before I begin, obviously a big thank you to Dr. Bogner and the NORD organization for having me today as a speaker. I'm deeply honored, and thank you very much. I'm going to have my sister help me with the slides, and let us begin. I was born in Connecticut at Danbury Hospital, and we lived in New Fairfield for some time. But then when I was around 2.5, we moved to California, and we've been living there ever since. As a child, I would say I was pretty athletic, pretty competitive. I loved playing basketball. I loved to go to the beach with my siblings, and we would play in the sand all day. I loved to go fishing too. But my biggest passion above all else was I wanted to be a pitcher. And I told mom and dad that I was going to pitch for probably the Padres or Mets or whatever, but I wanted to pitch. That was my passion. But unfortunately, this would all change as around 2017, I started to develop my first symptoms, and the biggest one being my feet. My feet started to curve in, and I noticed I would trip, and I would come home from school with Band-Aids on my knees, and I would just fall, and mom and dad would be like, well, did you run into something, or did like a ball hit you at school? And I'd be like, no, I don't know, I just fell. Also, sorry for this graphic image, but I had major bloody noses at this time too. A lot of nasal congestion, and some of the days I would have hay fever symptoms that my nose would just constantly run. It seems like every day it would just like roll a dice and I'd either get one of the 30. And these were all, pretty challenging. I'd like to show this video, if we can, of me running during basketball. As you can see, it's a lot of effort for me to do much of anything. Each stride was very exaggerated, and I wasn't getting anywhere, even though I thought I was running at my full speed. It was hard to compete with my friends, and I realized I had to stop playing some of the sports because I just couldn't perform as well as anyone else, and it was hard. So this would start my diagnostic journey as we started seeing, pediatricians, some doctors, and we eventually got sent to Rady's Children's Hospital, and their first idea was to give me serial casting, which would greatly benefit my feet because they would take my curved-in, crooked feet and they'd place them in a 90-degree angle, which would make it very beneficial for me to walk, because I'd walk upright and I would have a lot of balance again, and it was like it was great. And shortly after the casting too, you get braces which take the mold of the cast, that way you don't form any of That way you don't lose any of that movement the casting has given you. And still I was able to do some stuff. And I loved playing golf at this time because it was a sport that I could do.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Nice. Very nice. We're going home?
I love that video. After some time at Rady's, their hypothesis, I guess I should say, was CMT, because I had a lot of the characteristics for it, but it still wasn't really adding up with some of the testing they did. But still, me and Mom searched up CMT, anything about it, and we found this is when the NORD Center started to come in, because my grandmother had her neighbor across the street. She was talking to her one day, and she was explaining to her some of my symptoms, and she said that she was part of the NORD Center at Connecticut, and she knew about CMT, and she knew that in Iowa, a Dr. Michael Shai was the world expert in CMT. So it was only right for me, my mom, and my granddad to all go out to CMT and see what he had to say. Unfortunately, the results were not as we expected because, like Rady said, what I had would look to be CMT, but the testing didn't really come back to it. It was still a problem with the myelin sheath and some other problems such as that, but he was leaning towards like a CIDP or some other type of disease along that line. But it was Dr. Shai's wife, who was a pediatrician, that started looking at some other characteristics about myself and said that I had this really large chest, and my mom noticed it too. And she said when I go back to California, we should pursue some, GI testing, some liver testing, see what could possibly be going on around there. So this would ultimately lead to some biopsies that Rady's conducted. The muscle and nerve biopsy unfortunately came back negative, but the liver biopsy came back as stage 3 to stage 4 cirrhosis. And we were all, as you can imagine, quite stunned that, 11, 12-year-old boy would already have, stage 3, stage 4 cirrhosis. But that's what it was. That was a fact. That was the reality, and that was something that I would have to live on for the rest of my life. After cutting up with some dead ends at Rady's, we started doing some more research about the symptoms I was experiencing, and we came across some of the doctors at Boston Children's. They were around top 3, top 5 in almost everything that I was experiencing. And because we were originally from the East Coast, we thought that it was only right that we go out there and start developing some doctors out there. So we made the first trip in the summer of 2019, and we started seeing Dr. Darris in neurology, ENT for all the nasal stuff that was happening, And I started developing these bumps and skin tags all over my body, so we had to see dermatology too. In the winter, we had to go back because I started to not feel so good, and also to do some follow-up testing with Dr. Darris. But I started having some heart palpitations and some really heavy breathing, and I told Mom about it, and she said we should see a cardiologist out there. And after we saw the cardiologist, and she did a couple X-rays. On the way home to our hotel, the cardiologist called Mom and said, Liam needs to be rushed back to the hospital right now. He has this mass on his chest. We don't know what it is, but he needs to come back for some testing, and he'll probably be admitted. And it came back as a pleural infusion, and this just goes to show the amount of testing I was doing. I saw how many vials they did, and I thought it would be cool to take a picture for something in the future. So here we are. And it was just nuts, because in the end they removed 2.5 soda cans, like Diet Coke cans of just fluid that was surrounding my lungs. And like the cirrhosis, we just don't know how this stuff happens, but it did, and I'm now going to be followed by pulmonary for the remainder of my life, and I don't know if it'll come back again, but it's something to look out for. This to me was the visit that changed everything, because after we came back from Boston from that other trip, we went out again during COVID, but there was a little short period of time in COVID where it wasn't as infectious and it wasn't spreading as much, and we thought that it would be a really good time to go out, just do some exploratory testing that Dr. Darris wanted to conduct, and it would be a really quick in and out visit. But that was not the case, because within 2 to 3 weeks of me being there, I developed lymphedema in my legs, and that really changed a lot for me, because I remember on the way home, driving back to Mom and Papa's house, I had extreme pain in my legs, and I told Mom, you have to pull over on the highway, because my legs really, really hurt. And she took off my braces and everything, and my legs instantly blew up, and they were like balloons, and it was just nuts. This is an example of what my feet would look like in the morning, relatively thin, from resting. And by the end of the day, they were completely blown up. I remember I was talking with my brother and my granddad, and I was resting my leg just like this while talking to them, and after a while I put it back down, and that picture there showed this massive dent in my legs, and we knew that this was going to be a big, big problem. And that was what my right leg would look like too. Around this time as well, my hands started to get affected from the neurological aspect of things. I found myself opening up water bottles to be a lot more challenging. Tying my shoes was really hard. Any fine motor things was pretty difficult, but I still love to do Legos, and I think I will forever, but they'll just take me a long time. But it was really hard to see that even when I was playing Xbox, my brother was finally beating me in all my favorite games. So it was kind of hard, but that was that. as you can imagine, school, there was no school. How can you with such a disease and such problems? On the left is what my grades normally look like. I'm normally a pretty straight A student. I'm really well at understanding things and doing my work and such. But on the right is my grades during this time, because it was just one thing after another, and that's why that trip was so long. I mean, later on because I had the lymphedema in November, in December we had a massive surgery to fix a bilateral hydrocele surgery, because when I was born I had hydroceles and we were always told that they'd go away, but not in my case. And Dr. Yu, part of urology, took around 4 hours just on his part to fix up my groin, and it turned out to be like 2 hernias in there as well, and it was like a 7-hour surgery. And then in April, to top it off, I got COVID, so it was just a really tough time. After some extensive PT and OT from BCH, and we came back, I was actually feeling a bit better, and I was able to go to school. But shortly after going to school, I developed this painful sensation in my armpit, and it grew in size and in pain until one day at school I felt something wet in my armpit. And when I got home from school, I took off my shirt and I showed Mom and Dad just all of this stuff in my shirt, and it turned out to be hidradenitis suppurativa, and I would now have all of these lumps, these just boils or cysts, whatever you want to call them, in my armpits, and I'm now getting them in my groins too. But it's just another painful thing, that I'll have to deal with. The following year, I started to develop some styes in around March. Some of them were kind of small, like the one on the left, but they sometimes got bigger and therefore more painful, and that would then cause more ER trips, more testing, more this, more that, and it's you can't even see with these things. So again, I was stuck in school, not really doing so well because of all of these problems. This would spark optic neuritis too, which I didn't know was optic neuritis because at the time I was dealing with the styes. So in my opinion, I thought they were just the fluid from the stye that was covering my right eyeball, but as I tried to wipe away the stuff with a towel, I realized it wasn't going away. So me and Dad went to urgent care, and we got the visual field tests and all the natural eye tests, and the left eye is what is a normal eye, what it should look like. That little spot in the corner is just everyone's natural blind spot. But in my right eye, the whole thing is a blind spot. And I now can't really see much at all out of my right eye. So when I look at you all now, it's very clear, but when I close my left eye, it's just very hazy, very blurry, and there's not a lot of contrast, and everything is very dim. It was around the time of the optic neuritis when they did the MRI that they noticed a small mass on my neck, which turned into a big mass because endocrinology looked at it and they said, this is kind of bigger than we expected. And And they did an ultrasound, and they said, this is really big. We're gonna do a biopsy right now. And by a couple, weeks later, I was in the hospital again doing the surgery to remove a 4 centimeter mass that was attached to my thyroid that was cancerous, and I was diagnosed with papillary thyroid cancer. After the summer, with all of those incidents, in the fall I developed a rash which wasn't painful and wasn't itchy, wasn't scratchy, but very, very potent, very bright, very concerning. Don't know where it came from, don't know why it appeared, but we just don't know. And we just don't know. So when the school year came around, I said, this one's gonna be different. I know it. New school year, new me type of thing. But I was very, very wrong, because as soon as I started school, I developed major cramping, muscle spasms, tightness, anything you want to call it. I had it practically all over my body, especially in my legs. I couldn't really walk anymore. I was afraid I was gonna fall at school, in front of everybody or in the classroom. I thought that I wasn't gonna be able to go to school anymore. And those kind of thoughts that I had came true, because I did fall. I fell twice at school in theater, because I was trying to act out still, trying to pursue learning and trying to pursue education. But it's really hard to try and continue to live in society, go to school with some of these problems. It could be really demoralizing and pretty sad. And more size again, and then I had RSV around October time to again top it off. After this time, I sent a message to my team at Boston, and I said, guys, I really need a break here. I've been down in the dumps for quite some time. I really need to lift my spirits. I need you guys to help me out. So I sent a big message to them, and I sent a message to Dr. Bottomer and Complex Care here, and I went for a medical retreat to wind up not even like a couple steps after I got off the plane. I got picked up by Mom and Papa, and we went to a Chili's, and on the way out of the Chili's there was a little crack in the sidewalk, and I fell, and again I was rushed to the ER because I thought I broke my legs because I couldn't move them. It was very, very painful. And eventually I had to do the hydrocele surgery again, because what happened before was that the drain in one of the sides somehow came out, and therefore the fluid got stuck in, and I had to do it again. So, not to mention during all this time, I'm still having all the other symptoms of, the nose problems, the bloody noses, the nasal congestion, the hay fever symptoms, weakness, energy deficiency, and the only bright side in this was after the surgery, Mom explains to them what was really going on, and they thought it would be a really good idea to send me to Spalding Rehabilitation, which was really, really good, because they are wonderful over there. They really helped me get back up on my feet. even though they woke me up at 8 o'clock in the morning. But, gotta do what you gotta do. I mean, the impact I'd say is, it's very sad, you know. You have to realize that you're not gonna be that star pitcher that you wanted to be. You're not gonna play at the beach, you know, with your siblings again. And you know, it's tough. It's very tough, and it's hard sometimes to find, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel. But you know, when you hit rock bottom, you can only go one direction. So in conclusion, after all testing and what's up to date with me currently, I have a very chronic, roller coaster-like, undiagnosed disease because it's very up and down. We don't know what's gonna happen next. I've seen doctors in my past say, I don't know how a kid can have so much bad luck. I don't know how, another doctor said, you know, Liam, I've seen so many of your symptoms in other kids, but never have I ever seen all of them in one single patient. And, you know, that was really heartbreaking because that means I don't really necessarily belong in a category. It's not muscular dystrophy, it's not a nerve problem, it's not Lyme's disease, it's not MS, because it's undiagnosed. And it's just such a roller coaster, and I'm, for one, ready to get off of it. And I quite died at the amusement park. And I'd say that I've grown much wiser because I realize my problems I have, I realize other people's problems I have, and other people's problems that they have. And I'd say that I'm lucky in some cases and others are not, and I'm grateful for what I still have, and it's your mindset too on how you're going to receive the things on your life, and it's what you do about them, in my opinion, that will have an effect on the rest of your life and your story and your future. So thank you everyone for letting me share my journey and my story as a rare disease patient. I hope my experiences can bring awareness to other people, and hopefully we can find some genetic findings and maybe some possible treatments in the future.